All right, so we've gone through the first two steps already of our six-step process. The second step especially was quite extensive. You should now know how to determine all the key reference areas before your trading day starts, from the largest all the way down to the smallest overnight stuff. All right, and with practice, you'll be able to spot them quicker and easier. It's going to take practice. It's not a one-time thing. So you just do it every day and you'll get much better at it, and your eye will catch things much quicker. It'll be helpful for you to review what the market did after the day, see where it had some major reactions. Maybe there were key reference areas that you missed there. Now, not every time that the market reacts in a place there has to be a key reference area, but often there is. So looking at it after the fact will help you learn quickly if you missed the key reference area, and that's how you'll build up your skills much faster. All right? But for now, we get to step number 3, which, as you see in front of you, is to check the economic calendar and to know when the important economic releases are due. Now, most traders really screw up on this part. Okay? When it comes to news and economic releases and things of that nature, most traders make one of two mistakes. The first mistake that traders make is that they try to trade the news and economic releases in a straightforward manner. Now, what does this mean? This means that they watch the news, either they watch CNBC or something like that, or they're looking at the economic releases, and if the numbers come out better than expected, like they're very good numbers, they'll quickly rush in and try to buy. And if they come in worse than expected, the trader will quickly go in and try to short the market. Well, this is by default a losing strategy. All right. If it were that easy and that straightforward, anyone could make money in the markets. So the biggest way you're gonna hurt yourself when it comes to this is to do just that. Is to think you can trade it in such a straightforward manner. You see, the problem is that sometimes when the news, let's say, is great or there's a great economic release, the market does shoot straight up and just keep going. So a trader sees that and go, well, that would have been easy. All I had to do buy on the great news and I would have made so much money. Yeah, maybe that one time, but the other 8 out of 10 times, what the market will do is react a lot less rationally. Okay? It'll create what are called whipsaws. So it'll be great news, but the market will first sell off. It'll go down. Now that doesn't seem very logical, but a lot of times what'll happen is the professionals were buying before the news in expectation of the number. And when the great number comes out, they use that to sell, to take their profits. And so the market goes down instead of up. So it doesn't seem to make sense. But then often after it went down and it doesn't make sense, then it'll reverse and go back up. Or there's a lot of, infinite different ways it could act. My point is that it's not as simple as just buying on good news and selling on bad news. And a lot of traders unfortunately try to do that and they get killed. Even if they're right on the direction and with a great news, the market shoots up and they buy, often what will happen is the market reacts so fast to the news that by the time you get your buy order in, it's already moved such an extensive amount that you're going to get terrible trade location. You're not going to be able to have a low risk entry with a relatively small stop. And if you try to put it in, you're just going to get, your stop hit randomly. So again, that's another reason why it's just not profitable to trade it like this. Okay? And so after a while, most traders notice that, hey, this is not working out as I want it to. So then they switch to mistake number 2. And that's that they completely ignore the news and the economic releases. All right, they go, okay, well, this obviously doesn't work. They now start reading and hearing from professional traders that tell them, you can rarely trade the news straightforward like that. So they go, okay, I'll just completely ignore the news. They read in technical books that, price discounts everything so that the news is pointless. It's already discounted in price, so you can completely ignore it. One aspect of that is right, but the problem with this is that even though you don't want to trade it outright in a straightforward manner, you want to know when the economic releases are due. Of course, you can't know surprise news, so let's not even talk about that. But the scheduled economic releases, every week there are scheduled releases that are consistently coming out. And those you want to know when they're coming out. Why? Because they're going to affect volatility. Okay? It's not just about direction in trading. You're not always looking at what is the market going up or is it going to go down. You're looking at how far up and how far down. What is the range of movement? Okay? And knowing when the economic releases are due gives you a great heads up into the likely volatility that's coming in the market. That's one. And then number two is that you want to still pay attention to these economic releases because there is a way to trade them, but it's not in a straightforward manner, right? It's a more advanced strategy that we'll get to later on in the training. But suffice it to say that it'll have to do with noticing when the market is doing something it's not supposed to be doing based on the odds. So, the market comes out with great numbers, the economic release is excellent, everything's looking rosy, they beat expectations, but yet the market can't rise. Well, that's telling you something, right? That's telling you there might be a wall of sellers there. It's telling you that the buyers might not be as strong as we thought, and that could be a great sell. Of course, that's a more advanced strategy. I don't suggest it for any beginners. We'll get into it later. That one takes experience. But at the very least, you should be paying attention to these economic releases for the volatility aspect. So having said all this, and hopefully you understand the mistakes now of completely ignoring it and trying to trade it outright, having said that, let's jump in and give you a tool for keeping track of all the major economic releases and show you how to think about them. Okay, so here we are on the economic calendar. And I'll give you the URL for accessing this calendar. It's a free one in the key takeaways that are attached under this video. So make sure you download that PDF. You should be downloading all the key takeaways because, again, sometimes I do provide extra insights in those and different ways of looking at things. So they'll be always very helpful to read. But in this one, you will see the URL that'll allow you to access this calendar. Okay, it's by Econoday. So anyway, what you want to do every morning after you've done your top-down multiple time frame approach and after you've put in all of the key reference areas, drawn in all the support resistance lines, all that's ready, right? Then you jump into this. That's your third step. And what you want to do is you want to look and see if there are any major economic announcements. Now, the great thing about this calendar is that the analysts at Econoday basically let you know which ones are the most important announcements. And what they do is that the most important ones, the ones that are market moving, all right, they're highlighted with a red star. The less important ones, but still decent, are highlighted with a yellow one, and then the ones that really have very little impact are just, a gray dot. Okay? And so, for instance, we see that on Monday there was a big market moving report, and it was the personal income and outlays report. Now, a lot of these happen before the market opened, before the New York Stock Exchange opens. So this is at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. It's about an hour before. So this will affect the overnight session, and it'll generally set the tone for the early trading hours, for the first, half an hour or so. Okay? And potentially for the whole day. Now, here's what you need to do first. First, forget about, what the actual number is going to be and what the expectations are and all that. Now, the first thing I need you to do is just to note when the important ones are coming out. Okay? So for instance, if we were about to trade Monday, we would look and we would see, okay, there's an important number coming out before the market opens. That's good to know. And then an hour after the market opens, there's another potentially market moving one. Not a huge importance, but it can, move the market. You don't really need to understand what these are. This is the Federal Reserve Manufacturing Survey. So all you need to know is that it could move the market. Because what you need to do is that come 10:30, okay, you need to either be out of the market, just on the sidelines, not trying to put in a trade at that time, okay, because the volatility when the news comes out is probably just going to hit your stop for no reason. You're just going to take a needless loss. And trust me here, I'm speaking from experience early on. Had to learn all this the hard way. And then if you're already in a trade from the morning and the market is still close to the level where you entered and now a news event is coming out, it might be warranted, right? It might be a wise thing to either exit if you can, or at least, move your stop to break even or something, just so you don't just take a needless loss for nothing, right? On the one hand, yes, it could go in your direction. On the other hand, there's usually so much noise around the event that unless it goes straight in your direction, 8 out of 10 times it's just going to stop you out needlessly. So it just depends where you're at. If you haven't entered a trade, just stay on the sidelines. If you're already in one, if it's already way far in your direction, that's fine. If it's still close to your entry, you might want to exit before the news, especially if it's a market moving one like this one, or like, let's say, the jobless claims, the ISM manufacturing index, the employment situation. All those are major ones. Okay, so that's the first thing you should know when you're looking at this. That's how you need to be thinking. The second thing you should be doing is looking not just on your current day, but on the week as a whole. Okay, and what you want to do is note where these red stars are, like where the major reports are going to come out. Okay, and here's why you want to do that. Even though you're trading on Monday, what's coming out later in the week is actually going to affect how Monday trades, ironically enough. Why? Well, let's assume this. Let's assume you have heavy, it's a week full of major announcements. And this week's pretty, when it's Thursday and Friday come in, those are huge. You have jobless claims, the manufacturing index, and the employment numbers. I mean, those are three huge things all coming. So what will often happen is that the market will stay quiet leading up to these numbers. And the reason for that is the big institutions that move the markets, the major hedge funds and the mutual funds and the big traders and all that, they stay on the sidelines and they don't enter new positions and they don't make major moves until they find out what's going to happen here. Because these numbers will often influence their bigger picture view of the market. Okay, so what they do is they usually stay on the sidelines. And if they're on the sidelines, what happens? Well, there's no volatility. They are the ones that bring in the volume. The volume is what causes the volatility. And when there's no volume, they're not participating, there's not going to be much market movement. So the markets will probably, on average, trade sideways, all things being equal. Right? So if you were trading on, let's say, Tuesday or Wednesday, in which there's barely any numbers ahead of all these numbers, right? And you're expecting some major move up or down and some pattern showing you that, well, don't expect too much, right? You got to temper whatever you're seeing on the charts with the economic situation. And you got to realize that the odds of a big breakout trending move before such numbers is relatively low. It doesn't mean it can't happen, there's no certainties, but we trade on probabilities. And the odds tell you that most likely you're going to get a couple quiet days. So don't get chopped up trying to trade for a big breakout. All right, so this is extremely helpful. Just this alone will guide your trading in terms of, knowing when to expect the bigger moves and when to just be expecting the kind of sideways, slow, low tempo movement. And as you'll see, one of the biggest keys to successful trading is knowing when not to trade. All right, and this tells you when not to be aggressive, when not to be looking for the big moves. Doesn't mean you can't trade. You could be fading key resistance and support areas and taking small profit exits, but again, this is going to affect how you enter. Are you looking for the trending move? Are you not? It's going to affect how tight or wide your stops are. It's going to affect how much profit exit you shoot for. If you're trading in this day, you're not going to be shooting for huge profit exits, most likely, because the market is likely going to be quiet and not even reach those profit exits. Okay, So you see how all this stuff fits together? And later, if you've really developed your trading skills and all that, then you can actually start pressing on these, seeing what the actual expectation is, then having a real-time news feed. It's usually a premium thing you pay for that shows what the real numbers are versus the expectations, and then maybe having some advanced strategies to trade those. But I don't recommend that until you're quite adept at trading already. And trust me, you never need to trade the news to make money, right? You can just be aware of when they're coming out, be aware of what they tell you about likely volatility, adjust your trading based on that, but you never really need to trade them. You can make a lot of money without ever having to trade them, okay? So just make sure you follow this step every single day. Never be caught not knowing that a major economic release is coming out, and always be looking ahead for the whole week, just seeing the whole potential volatility environment. One special situation I might add, economic release, is the FOMC announcement, when the Federal Reserve makes their announcement regarding interest rates. And in those times, you really got to pay attention. The morning of the day of the announcement will usually be dead, right? Or it'll be a drifter. It'll drift up or it'll drift down. So there's not gonna be much movement. So don't get chopped up trying to buy or sell. And then once the announcement hits, things really go crazy. So most often you just want to stay on the sideline and let things play out. All right. And one last thing I should mention is that some markets have their own specific reports that are very important to them, even though it doesn't affect the general stock market and the index futures. For instance, you have the oil report right here, the EIA Petroleum Status Report. This report is very important for oil. So if you're trading oil, this is a major market mover. And often it'll end up affecting the rest of the markets because, markets are correlated. But for oil, this is huge. And you just want to watch out for this especially. If you trade natural gas, this is important, the natural gas report. If you happen to trade the bond, interest rate instruments, these are going to be important, the auctions and the note announcements. So even though these all are in gray or yellow star, for the general market, for those specific instruments or markets that you trade, those will be very important. So it just depends on what you trade, right? Make sure to pay attention to that. All right, so that's a great tool. Make sure to check out the Key Takeaways PDF again for the website address to that. And that basically wraps up this particular step. In the next session, we'll get into a related step, which is the average true range and volume environment, because that also relates to volatility. So really steps 3 and 4 are all about volatility, engaging the potential ranges, which is a huge thing that most traders are not aware of. And it will really be the key in helping you determine your stops, your exits, even your timing of when big moves are likely to happen or not. Okay, so very important stuff, and we'll continue it in the next session.